Hey guys, cooldomino here. In this video, I'm going to be doing maintenance on a Model 2 Siren. I got a couple of requests to do it, so if I can find the comments, I'll put them on the screen right now. Well, you can see this is my federal signal Model 2 Siren. It's a 240 volt model, and yours might be 120 volts, but that's okay. For this tutorial, it's good for Model 2s, Model 2Ts, and even 120 volt Model 2s. Model 2s are either 120 or 240. You can see it does work. I can give you a growl. Probably remember the setup right here from a couple of my other videos. We're not doing maintenance on the setup today. We're doing maintenance on the Model 2. So what I recommend doing. So the tools that you're going to need is you're going to need some pliers, like some nose pliers or these welding pliers. A 5/64 Allen wrench, a regular adjustable wrench, if needed, that's an optional tool. Phillips and or flathead screwdriver. Where is it? Here it is. A Phillips and or flathead screwdriver, and a crowbar, small or large, doesn't matter, and some channel locks, a hammer, and some optional tools is this socket wrench right here with a 11/16 socket on it, and a bearing puller, some nippers, and a hobby knife like this one right here. Those are the tools you're going to need. I'll lay them out so you can get one more view of them. So these are all the required tools right here, and up here these are the optional tools. Well, you might need this right here if you're going to clean the commutator. You're also going to need a power cord, 120 volt power cord as well. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So first thing that you want to do is make sure you turn off your system right here. Like, make sure the breaker's in the off position. Make sure it does not work when it's in the off position, just like that. If you have power going to, like I do. So make sure there's no power being used during any time of the working process of the siren. Only use power when I instruct you to. Now the next thing that you want to do is go ahead and just remove the cover. You should be able to pull straight up. Sometimes it gets a little stuck sometimes, but most of the time it should come right out. You just set the cover aside. You don't really need it for the inspection. So this is what a Model 2 looks like, in case you don't know what one it is. You can see, just go ahead and do a physical inspection on it right now. Let's just go ahead and give this a spin right here, see how freely it spins. In my case, mine spins freely. So now what you want to do now is you want to disconnect your power. Go ahead and undo your wire cap. That was actually loose, actually. I'm going on here to check it. And just go ahead and just toss the wires aside. If your siren is grounded, make sure you disconnect the ground. There's like a screw right here that can disconnect it. Just disconnect it. Your grounding might be a little different than mine. Mine actually came with this thing right here, which is pretty useful. If your ground comes like this right here, just take the screw and nut that came off of it and just finger tighten it back on. Not all the way, just so you know where it is. I set the wire cap somewhere, but you'll find it later. Now I'm going to go ahead and get this on my workbench and I'll be right back. So this is the Model 2 right here. So you can see this is what it looks like. It's pretty big. It's bigger than you think it is sometimes. Like normally some people would think it's like this size right here. Like come up in here. But it's actually a lot bigger. This is like around 1 foot. This is like about 1.5 feet tall. So yeah, let's go ahead and start the disassembly and inspection. So the first thing that you want to do is just go ahead and take it and just flip it over. Just like that. You have it upside down now, which is what you want. Now you want to inspect these wires right here. Make sure they all look pretty smooth. There shouldn't be any nicks or anything. Make sure there's no exposed copper or anything like that. What I did here is I just zip tied them to the frame of the siren because they kept getting in the way. But yeah, you can see this is called the commutator right here. These are the brushes. Sometimes these brush caps right here get a little tight though, so sometimes you can use a pair of channel locks like what I have to undo them. So, but since these are already done, you want to do this slowly basically. So go ahead and just undo this one slowly. And you want to keep pressure on the brush cap as well, just until you get it pop off. Until it comes off on its own. Just do this slowly and keep putting pressure on it. Like that. There you go. There's one brush cap. Now try not to drop this in the Siren though. Now to inspect the brushes, pretty simple though. Just go ahead and pull it out. Take a look at it. Make sure there's no exposed copper on the end of it right here, like on my bad brushes. Yeah, I'll show you a picture of what a bad brush looks like on the screen. But yeah, your brush should look like this right here. It should be nice and long and should not have a bit of copper on the end. In this case, this brush is good. It has a little spring on here as well, but sometimes my other brushes don't have a spring. If you need new brushes, I'll put a link in the description below where I found some. And I'll make a tutorial video on how to put new brushes in. So as you have new brushes like this one right here, but as you're using the link in the description, which is not sponsored by this link, you should be able to you have to take the spring off the old brush and take the spring off the new brush, put the old spring on the new brush, basically. That's basically what I heard. And just go ahead and make sure you put this in the same orientation as how it came out. Don't put it in like this right here. I want you to put it back in the same orientation. Now just go ahead and spin this over, around. Make sure that brush does not fall out. So I'm going to put this in a little bit more. There you go. Here's the other brush cap right here. Do the same thing. Go ahead and undo it, but be very careful. In this case right here, this one does not have a wire on it or an end cap, which is fine though. But I'm going to pull out the spring right here because the brushes that I have, one of the brushes that I have actually came from an older model too, so the wires were a little worn out. But in this case, since I have to, if I want to get in here, I'm going to use a pair of welding pliers, or just any old needle nose pliers should work, and just kind of look for it. There you go. Oh wow, that wire is really worn. I don't know what happened there, but yeah, just take the brush out. Just look at it again. This one looks pretty good. If you see something like this right here with an arcing on here, don't worry too much about that. It's just going to be rubbed off easily. Now these are made of graphite right here, so you want to be careful with them. After that one looks pretty good, so make sure you put it back in the same orientation. And we're good to go for the next step. I'll be putting timestamps in the description below on everything on the inspection process. I'll probably should do that with my other inspection videos as well, or maintenance videos. So make sure the spring came off right here like this one has right here. You can put that aside along with the brush caps. So set those aside, make sure you don't lose them, because if you lose them, you're going to have trouble finding new ones. If you're going to lose the brush caps. There we go, and then I'll go ahead and flip over to Siren again. This is the Siren right here. You can see here's the tag right here. I do not recommend scratching the tag, but if you're comfortable enough, you can take the tag off if you want. But I'm going to leave the tag on in this case. Now go ahead and take your flathead screwdriver and undo these 4 screws that are holding the intake onto the stator. Alright, there you go. Now all the screws are out. Now sometimes the intake cone can get a little stuck on there. What you can do, you could just take a screwdriver, a flathead screwdriver, just lightly press it there and just tap it with the hammer to get it off, like what I'm doing. But with the hammer. Like I have a hammer right there. So just go ahead and do this. Just kind of do it evenly though. There's the intake. So I'm going to set the intake aside. There are now 4 screws on the top here. Go ahead and undo these 4 screws right here. And some of the screws are a little stubborn though. You can use an impact driver to take the screws out. But there you go. Now what you want to do now is just put your hands on top of the rotor, like this, and just kind of push down a little bit until you hear a click like that. That releases the top bearing right here. Make sure you can get the rotor out a little easier later on. Now, go ahead and undo the 4 screws that are around the ring right here. Now, the sound ring is free. Sometimes I've seen some model 2s with the ring sandwiched between the bottom of the motor and the stator, or the motor chassis and the stator. So, in that case, you can just leave the sound ring on, but in this case right here, I'm just going to pull it straight off. Like that. Let's set that to the side for now. So yeah, now this is important right here. Grab yourself a Sharpie and mark where it meets right here. Like these 2 lines right here. This is important for later on. Now go ahead. There are 2 alignment pins right here. Let's take a hammer and just knock them out right here. There's 1. There's 2. Now, the stator should be free. So just pull straight up on it. And there's your stator. Stator looks pretty good. Make sure there's no bends or cracks in it or anything, and you should be good to go. Now, this is the rotor right here. I've seen some rotors get a little stubborn and coming out though, but my method is I have the rotor like this right here. You just grab a crowbar, slip it between the motor chassis and the stator or the rotor, and just pry up on it until you hear it pop like that. Now just go ahead and set the crowbar aside, and just pull straight up. Be very careful because there's some coils in here, and you do not want to scratch the coils. Just go ahead and pull out. And by the way, make sure you have the brushes out as well at this point. They're in here still, but I'm just leaving them in here just so you're gonna be in the same orientation. Just go ahead and pull this out. Be very careful. All right, got this out, and I'm gonna set this aside and do some more inspection on it later. So this is your coil right here. You just want to inspect the coils right here and make sure they all look good. A little dirty right here, but there's some dirt on here. You can see the coils right here. They look pretty good. Inspect both sets of fields right here. These are called the fields, which in this case they look pretty good. Now be very careful with those fields because they can get scratched easily. Someone told me what to do if the fields are bad and how to get the fields out of the core. Out of the chassis. Well, I have a solution for that. First, you want to flip this over. And be very careful. Remember once again. Now, you can see the Allen wrenches right here. A lot of people think to take out these screws right here and take the brush holders out. No, that's not the case in this case. You do not want to take the brush holders out if you can avoid it. What you want to do is you want to grab an Allen wrench. You want to find the size that you need. I'll show you all the tools. All the tools that I'll show you in the beginning. I'm just kind of test them one by one. This one seems to work. So this one is a 64th. I have to remember that. Sometimes these little frames, right, these legs can get in the way. Feel free to take those off if you want to. But yeah, let's go ahead and we're gonna go ahead and take the ring out. You don't have to undo these all the way. And by the way, there's like a little nut in here as well, so you can take your pliers and just undo the nut as well. Which I'm gonna simply just lift the ring. I mean, I have to undo it a little bit more. And there you go. Now your ring's off right here. Make sure you leave that set screw and not to lose that. Do the same thing on the other one. And now I'll just go ahead and flip this back over. Look at that brush. Now it should be your frame up here. There are 6 screws right here. There's 2 long ones and 4 short ones right here. Now go ahead and take your screwdriver and just undo all the screws. Alright, now all the screws are out. This bracket should be able to come right off super easily. Now just make sure there are no wires in the way. Make sure the brushes are not getting in the way down here. But now we're going to go ahead and take the fields out. So just go ahead and grip down here. Sometimes they can get a little stuck in here, like not with the mic, so the PV blaster or paint stripper in there, and see if we can get that done. Just try not to get the PV blaster or paint stripper on the windings. I should be able to pull this out, and this should come out easily, most of the time. If it doesn't, I'm just using PV blaster. There are your fields right here. This is the field core right here. And you can see in this case it looks pretty good. There's actually a part number on here as well, so in case you need to know, there's a part number right here. So yeah, that looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and set this off to the side. So yeah. You want to inspect the fields, and then if you get your fields in there, you just drop it right in, and it should be good to go. Take a look at the fields right here. You want to take one wire, one of the wires right here, put your meter on here, and probe the iron core of it. See if you get any resistance at all. If you get anything that's less than only a couple of ohms though, that means your core is shorted and you're going to need a new one. I'm not sure where you can find a new one though, but say this is my new one, you can drop it back in. Which is what I'm going to do right now. And make sure you probe, make sure there's connection between the two fields. Like there's two wires per field. I probe between these two wires right here. And probe between these two wires down here. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and drop this back in and secure it back in place. So how to do that is you simply look for these screws right here. Look for these hole slots right here. These go like this right here, so they line up with the holes on here. So we're going to go ahead and feed the wires through. You might have to wiggle it a little bit to get in now, but try not to scratch the coil. The last thing you want to do with this thing is scratch the coils. Make sure all holes are lined up. You can do that by just taking one of the longer screws right here, feeding it down here, and just see if it threads. You might have to rotate it a little bit so you get it aligned. And in this case, it's aligned. Now just simply take your bracket right here. This only goes on one way, I believe. Yeah, it only goes on one way. So just put it back on the way it came off. And just simply pull all the screws back in. By the way, the mention with the brushes is right here. You see a little chip right here. Don't worry too much about that though. Because it's going to keep happening as it keeps spinning though. But yeah, just something to keep in mind. The chips are not too bad. As long as if it doesn't get worn down to the copper, that's a bad thing. So yeah. Now I got the bracket back in. Now we're going to go ahead and reconnect the rings back on the brush cap. And no, they are not collector rings. That's on a different Siren. Let's go ahead and flip this over. Now this is a little tricky part right here. You're going to have to put the rings in, like this right here. Here, let me zoom in so you can see. So you can see what I'm doing. So simply just take the ring right here. Simply just take the ring with the little set screw on there. Just slip it on top and just take your Allen wrench and just pull it this way. Make sure the wire is all nice and tight. And simply tighten down the wrench. You don't have to put it too tight in there, but as long as the wire is not interfering with the commutator area, you should be okay. I'm just going to go ahead and tighten this in place, and I'll be right back. So now, once you got all back in place, you want to route the wires around this thing. So basically, you just feed the wires through this little hole right here. Just like that, and then bring it back over here. And then do the same thing with the other wire. Feed it through. I can get it through. There we go. And just feed it over here. Also, you want to grab some zip ties as well. Make sure you zip tie the wires securely though, just so you will not come undone. There you go. Now the fields are back in. Now I'm going to go ahead and flip this back over. Slide this out of the way. Now you want to inspect the armature right here. Don't worry too much about the rotor. Make sure there's no chips or anything in the rotor before running it. If there's a chip in here, I can throw it off balance. So basically, you want to look at the bearings right here. See how smoothly they spin. You can see, you want to look at the commutator right here. Make sure it's all nice and clean right here. There's no dirt in between each plate right here. And you also want to look at the windings as well. I can see there's some windings up here. Some windings over there. Make sure those all look okay. Make sure there's nothing chipping or anything, or shorting with the core. Again, take a meter, probe one of the plates on here, and then probe it onto the iron core right here. So make sure both bearings spin well, like this one right here. This one spins pretty well. And this one spins pretty well. This just looks pretty good. So right here is a commutator right here. So basically what you want to do, take one of these kind of hobby knives right here, a nice thin one, and just simply wedge it, simply slip it between the two plates to commutator, and just simply drag down. But be careful not to touch the coils. Make sure there's no dirt in there. Do it on every single one. And it's going to be tedious and time consuming, but you kind of want to do this like 1 or 2 strokes per commutator plate. And just make sure it's all nice and clean and you get all that gunk out of there, because sometimes it could gunk up with carbon dust, and you know carbon is conductive and it will short everything out. So yeah, that's one little recommendation I recommend doing when you first get them all too, and if it doesn't work the first time. Another request I've gotten is how to replace the bearings on each thing. We're going to need a bearing puller for that case. So basically just go ahead and, there's like a little clip on here, but I don't know what happened to it though, but there's like a little retaining clip. So you want to take that off, and then you want to put your bearing puller on. Line this little pointy part with the inside of the hole on the shaft, and just simply tighten it up basically, like just go tight on it. Also, this is when your 11/16 washer will come in handy. I'm not going to pull the bearing off of my Model 2, but I do have another part I'm going to use to pull the bearing off with. I'm going to just take this off and I'll be right back. This right here is an armature from another motor. So basically it has a bearing on here. This bearing's not the greatest though, but how to take it off? Just simply grab your bearing puller. You put this on here, get this aligned and make sure it's lined up with that hole. Just tighten it in place. Take a little bit of turning. And simply use your 11/16 socket on your socket wrench and just simply take it off. You have to tighten it up on here. You have to tighten up the shaft on the bearing puller. Get it. And there you go. There's your bearing. That's how you do it, basically. Now, assuming you have a new bearing, what you want to do is you want to go ahead and stand it upright. And just set the bearing on here. Like that, and then just simply grab your hammer and tap it down as far as it will go. I'm going to leave this bearing off for now, but that's pretty much what's going to happen. Now once you think everything is good in here, go ahead and bring your motor, your fields back over, and go ahead and place the armature back in, but be very careful not to scratch these coils right here, because if you do, it could short out, basically. Just be careful, and then once you get it in all the way, you can just push it in. And there you go. Now the rotor's back in. Now I'm going to put my stator back on, and you may remember that line I drew earlier. That's when that comes in handy. So basically, see this line right here. You want to make sure this line right here is lined up together like that, right there. So yeah, everything looks pretty good, and put the pin in on a center hole on each side. See, these pins only go in one way. And once you put the pins in, just go ahead and tap it in. Go ahead and give it a test spin. Make sure everything's smooth, and it is. Yeah. That looks pretty good, which is good. Now what you want to do is you want to grab your ring. If your ring goes in before the stator, just go ahead and fix that now. But right now, you go ahead and put the ring in right now. Make sure it's lined up with all the holes. It doesn't matter if it goes in like this or if it goes in like this. It doesn't really matter. Oh yeah, now I'm going to go ahead and put all the 4 screws back in, and I'll be right back. So another question I got is, some people think they're scraping in their Siren now. Well, there's 2 ways you can fix it though, fix the scraping. One method is to put your alignment pins in. There's one over here. Or you can rotate the stator 180 degrees. That should fix the problem. If it doesn't, your shaft might be a little bent, and you might have to replace the whole shaft and armature if that's the case. But yeah, I'm gonna finish putting these screws back in. I'll be right back. Now, before you put the intake back on, you want to make sure that these screws are in on the top. There are 4 of them. Make sure you put these 4 screws back in. It's a little tricky to get a little started though, but once you get it in all the way, it should be able to go in smoothly. Basically, these screws here are going to pull the bearing so it's flush with the bottom of the stator. So just start with 2 that are like one here and one here. Not like here and here. They're basically diagonal from each other is what I'm trying to say. So start with that and then just go ahead and tighten them in. There you go. Now you can put the intake back on. This is the intake right here. So go ahead and put this back on. Now this is the tricky part right here. Getting those holes aligned are really tricky. Like these holes aligned to here. And sometimes the holes may strip out, which can be a problem though, which means you're going to have to re-drill and tap them. If that's the case though, like just go ahead and push it in there, see if it goes in all the way. But in this case it doesn't, so I'm just going to go ahead and put the intake on. Just kind of tap it down with your hands. You don't want to use a hammer though, because that'll be too strong for this basically. But yeah, you want to make sure all those holes are lined up. And you can see you also want to kind of go in the corners of the ports right here, like this right here, just to get out any dirt and dust, like right there. There's some dirt and dust in here. Like, sometimes it gets built up in here and then it can cause some problems. So, but not anything too severe though. But it's good to clean it out every now and then. So yeah, once you get that in, I'm going to line this up and put all the screws in. Also, another thing I forgot to mention is with these screws right here, do not over tighten them because they'll strip out. That's one thing to keep in mind, because this stator is made of aluminum. One thing to keep in mind. There you go, got all the screws in. Now it's time for testing. And you can see this spins freely right here. Oh, and also, I'm going to flip this over. So you can see that spins freely, that spins right there because there's no tension on the brushes right now. So yeah, I'm going to flip this over and we'll put the brush caps back in. You have your brush caps. If you hopefully you still have them at this point, but you're gonna need both of the brush caps and the spring if the one of the brushes is like mine. So I'm gonna put the spring in, and then simply just go ahead and take the brush cap and just kind of push the spring back in with the cap on, and just turn it back in place. And remember, do not drop these caps. Avoid dropping these caps into the Siren. Because if they do drop in here, they're going to have to take this apart or shake it out or something to get it back out. But this should tighten up pretty easily. I recommend just hand tightening them. Don't use any tools or anything. Just do the same thing on the other one. So yeah, pretty cool. Now I'm going to go ahead and wire it up to 120 volts AC. Your Model 2 might be 240 or 120 or whatever. Don't worry too much about the voltage right now, because basically what you're going to do now, you're going to just wire up the power, just make sure it works. You can get a 12 volt battery and test that out if you want to though, but it's just better to use 120 volts AC like this right here. So I got my power cord right here. You can see it goes from the standard power cord, 3-prong, or 2-prong would also work as well, to pigtails right here. So what you want to do is you want to go ahead and take the wires and put them together like this. You don't have to twist them, but you can twist them if you want to. But make sure they're aligned, and then just go ahead and take your wire cap and tighten it on. Just like that. And then do the same thing on the other wire. So you can connect the ground. If you want to connect the ground somewhere, you connect it to the chassis of the Siren. Because the reason why that is because if this wire comes loose or something happens in the fields or anything, it would touch the casing of the Siren, making it safe to touch, basically. Tripping the breaker, making it safe to touch. So now once you got this wired in, I'm going to go ahead and plug it into my switch box over here. I'll make a tutorial on how to make one of these at some point. And I just recommend starting out with just a couple growls. Just to make sure everything's working though. Make sure the brushes are in all the way, and also watch for sparks on the commutator. The sparks are yellow colored. You're going to need the brushes. If the sparks are kind of a bluish green color, you should be good to go. Now I'm just going to go ahead and let it run up for one cycle real quick, and then we can finish things up. Still doesn't work. So yeah, pretty cool. This siren seems to work. Now I'm going to go ahead and disconnect the power cord right here, and I'm going to put it back on my system. Now at this point it's always good to make sure that the power is still off right here, otherwise it could be a shock hazard, which I don't want to get shocked by 240. So I've been shocked by 120, but I don't want to get shocked by 240. It's never fun. So I'll go ahead, I'm going to bring my siren over. Here's them all too. I'm going to set it where you want it, and then once you got everything wired up and your ground connected and everything, once you get everything connected and your ground and everything, you can go ahead and turn the power back on. Just like that. You can see my AR timer light is turned on. Now I'm going to go ahead and grab my keys real quick. Give it a quick growl just to make sure everything's wired properly. And go ahead and arm the system, and I'm going to give it a growl. As you can see, it's working the way it should. Now go ahead and disarm the system, if you have a system like this right here, and disconnect the power one more time. Make sure there are no wires up in the commutator area, and then you should be able to put the shroud back on. There you go. The Model 2 shroud is on. If you have any questions or anything, please leave them in the comments down below. You're probably wondering, if you're just new to the Siren community, you're probably wondering, what the Model 2 shopper motor. Model 2 motor looks a lot like a Thunderbolt motor. That's because they're pretty much the same thing. Brushed 2 horsepower motor at 6,000 RPM. So yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm gonna go ahead and turn the power back on. Real quick. So yeah, have any questions, leave them in the comments down below, or if you want me to do any more siren maintenance videos like on extras and everything, if you want to do, if I missed anything, let me know in the comments down below. Other than that, thanks for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.